That's what sucks about 538, right? I feel like we wind up rooting for like the boring, predictable outcome a lot of the time. Whereas I actually think the world's a fairly unpredictable place, but there are hang-ups in political journalism where, you know, something that's 90% likely to occur, people say, oh, it's too close to call, they don't want to be wrong, they want to create more suspense. But I lost my train of thought. But anyway, I'd be wary of this time there's different arguments. And if it's different, it might not be so different that you get Trump or Bernie Sanders nominated. Different might mean that it takes a long time before Rubio wins and gets a little ugly. Different might maybe mean that Ted Cruz or someone might have a shot, or that Carly Fiorina, who, although she's considered an outsider because she hasn't held office before, ran for California Senate as an establishment-backed Republican in 2010, was a campaign surrogate for McCain and for Romney, and so, you know, kind of as a stealth establishment candidate, maybe she could do it. Trump is a long way to go.
That's exactly right. You know, if you want somebody who's different, why choose Donald Trump? There's just no reason. If you want an outsider candidate, you have other choices, people who are much more likable than Trump. Carly Fiorina, Ben Carson, whose net favorability is very, very high. That is, he's very popular. See, I'm putting it in more straightforward terms. You have somebody like Ted Cruz, who sort of jumps the two. Trump is just somebody who is a show. It's a show. People are interested in a show. Politics is reality TV. But when it gets down to actual voting, we've seen over and over again shows tend to decline and they tend to go nowhere. Remember, Anthony Weiner was a show in New York City. He was leading in the polls through July, just 2 months before the actual Democratic nomination, and then he got 5% of the vote. Shows do well early, but then actual politicians tend to do well late.
And Trump is, like, very skilled.
Yeah, so he's a very smart man. He's fooled a lot of people so far.
But he's very skilled. I mean, kind of taking advantage of, I mean, the two grand theories about Trump are that Trump exploits problems with the media or he exploits problems with the Republican Party, or both. And I kind of think it's probably some of both, where they've been told for years you want an outsider with executive experience. Well, Donald Trump has both those things, sure, right? That it makes it tricky. But I do get that you get that sense almost that that the 30% of people who say they prefer Donald Trump, it's almost like, well, we think the Donald Trump show is more interesting than the actual primary right now. You know, there's some evidence that some of those voters aren't people who, you know, truck out to their caucus in Iowa in the dead of winter to vote, and that they're kind of new voters. Whether they'll actually turn out or not, or would turn out for Trump, is a little bit less clear. But it's almost a different trajectory that those voters are on, I think.
Yeah. Civis Analytics, which is a Democratic firm, they actually called registered Republican voters, and they found that Trump's support, at least nationally, was significantly less than most of the public polls found. A lot of these public polls are just calling up people randomly. There's no way to really verify whether or not they're voters. And, I mean, at this point, I kind of feel like picking up a poll saying I'm a voter and saying I'm going to support Donald Trump for president just so I can see the news coverage the next day and have myself a good laugh.
And when you have polls of super engaged voters, so although you can definitely go too far in looking at like straw polls and votes at conferences and stuff like that, you know, in the Values Voter Summit, he finished with, what was it, 6% of the vote?
I thought it was 5, but...
Nevada, an important early state, they had a state fair, whatever it was in Nevada, where you have a lot of people to caucus state, so kind of leaders of people who will gather support for the caucuses. Trump finished with like 5 votes out of 120 or something.
Jeb Bush won that, or at least won a
Washington. Jeb Bush is a more organized candidate, won that campaign. So it's not clear kind of literally who the pollsters are getting on the phone. You know, you read a list of 15 candidates and people say, okay, you know, sure, Donald Trump, why not? It's different than when voters are actually at the brink of making a decision.
So if